Norman Barnett is a training officer for the Arizona Department of Agriculture. Norm came to AZDA after a 26-year career in food safety with Fry's Food and Drug Stores, a Kroger company. Norm was the company liaison with the FDA, USDA, and all environmental health departments within the state of Arizona. Norm also managed the corporate recall program, facilitated all food safety training, and the cleaning and sanitation programs with vendor Ecolab K Chemical. Since 2017, Norm has assisted with the statewide implementation of the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule with AZDA. As a training officer, he works directly with Arizona growers, harvesters, packers, and holders of fresh produce. He performs grower training courses, on-farm readiness reviews, and statewide educational outreach. Norm is a committee member with the University of Arizona's Food Safety Consortium. He holds current membership with the Arizona Environmental Health Association and has served as a former board member. Last, Norm is also credentialed by the FDA as a state agent commissioned to perform activities in Arizona relating to produce. Valentine Casillas also is a training officer for the Arizona Department of Agriculture, based in Yuma. Val was hired in 2021 and comes with 5 years of experience regarding Department of Labor laws, regulations, policies, and procedures on a state and federal level. Val received several awards for providing passion to serve, impacting thousands of migrant seasonal farm workers. During this time, Val conducted farm outreach across Arizona to provide guidance and tools regarding both worker and employer rights and responsibilities for domestic and H-2A farm workers. In 2018 and 2019, Valentine and his team received the Arizona Department of Economic Security Team Award for those efforts. Valentine brings his passion for our farmers and farm workers and is committed to working with growers, harvesters, packers, and holders to provide statewide implementation of the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. Let me share my screen here. Let's see, screen 2, share, slideshow, from the beginning. All right, does that look good?
Looks good.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Norm Barnett, as mentioned, with the Arizona Department of Agriculture. And I want to thank the conference organizers for inviting us to present today on the subject of the Food Safety Modernization Act and specifically the Produce Safety Rule. I've had the honor of presenting to this group a couple years ago. Therefore, some of this material might sound a little familiar to you. However, we've tweaked the presentation and updated much of the content, and we hope that you'll find this new and improved presentation of value to you. Additionally, my fellow trainer, Mr. Valentine Casillas, will be co-presenting with me. And with that, I think I'm going to turn this right over to Val.
All right. Thanks, Norm. Okay, so thanks for that great introduction, everyone. Really enjoying the conference. Let me go over today's agenda. We're going to start off by introducing our Arizona Department of Agriculture team. That's our Produce Safety Rule team, and our University of Arizona Cooperative Extension partners as well. We're going to talk about our winter agriculture season and how important it is to our Arizona economy. We're going to review the Food Safety Modernization Act and the Produce Safety Rule and why it was enacted into law. And we're also going to give you some background and history. We're going to describe Arizona's efforts to put the Produce Safety Rule and enact it. We're also going to cover some education and outreach, including our new on-demand training created in an effort aimed at aiding harvesting companies. Let me see here. We're also going to share our program accomplishments to date, what's ahead with the produce safety rule program, then wrap it up with the opportunity for you to ask any questions. And you can use the chat feature, and we'll definitely get to those questions if time allows. Okay. So the produce safety rule team is housed within the citrus, fruit, and vegetable division within the Arizona Department of Agriculture. Teresa Lopez is the principal investigator for the Arizona Produce Safety Rule program. Teresa also is the administrator of the Arizona Leafy Green Marketing Agreement, or LGMA. Danielle Runyon is the program manager for the Produce Safety Rule program and our liaison with the FDA. Norman Barnett is our lead trainer officer, coming to you from the Arizona Department of Agriculture after a 26-year food safety career with the Fry's Food and Drug Stores in Arizona. Next are our two inspectors, Brad Zitlo and Share Gigante. They're our regulatory arm of our program, inspecting farms statewide. And as for myself, I'm also a training officer based in Yuma. Norm and I conduct outreach, farm consultations, and grower training courses. Next, I'll introduce to you our University of Arizona team members at the Cooperative Extension. And first you see Dr. Shannon Rock. She's an associate professor at the University of Arizona and a specialist in environmental science, water quality, and food safety. Shannon co-facilitates farm consultations with our Arizona Department of Agriculture staff and with grower training courses. Dr. Lucy Lee joined the University of Arizona last year, the team last year. And in 2007, Lucy earned her doctorate degree in entomology from Purdue University. Her 27 years of experience spans multiple fields of entomology and IPM programs. Lucy also is a trainer on the Produce Safety Rule team. And then we have Natalie Brasso. She's also with the University Extension and Research Assistant. She earned her master's degree in environmental microbiology from the University of Arizona. Her specialty is in surface water quality used for farming and recreational uses. Natalie is also a lead trainer on the Produce Safety Rule. That runs up our team, so I'll next move into the arena of Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA. All right, so we are so grateful for our winter agriculture here in Arizona, where a large majority of the farming happens in Yuma alone. These numbers that I'm going to share with you are to give you a better idea of how big winter agriculture is in Arizona. Also known as the lettuce capital of the world, due to mild climate and favorable soil composition, Yuma produces over 90% of vegetables in the U.S. I live here in Yuma, Arizona myself, and let me tell you, with the workforce that shifts our way from winter harvest workers and winter visitors, we pretty much double in population during winter. This town is pretty much hustling and bustling. Another big number to share with you is that the Arizona farmers produce 1.8 billion pounds of leafy greens during our winter season. That doesn't even include all our other winter vegetables, such as broccoli, cauliflower, celery, cilantro, and many more. Daily between Thanksgiving and Easter, 1,000 to 1,200 semi-truckloads of leafy greens trucks leave Yuma to deliver all over America and Canada, so that all of us can enjoy our leafy greens during the winter time. Just a factoid here. If you lined up 1,200 semi-truck rigs bumper to bumper, that line would almost be 16 miles long. That's roughly the distance between Sky Harbor Airport to the city of Gilbert, Arizona. So if you can imagine how many trucks just leave Yuma every single day during that time frame. During the same time frame, between Thanksgiving and Easter, America consumers enjoy 9.4 billion servings of Arizona-grown leafy greens. On the last bullet there, Americans consume 130 million salads per day. So that's a lot of moving produce just out of our state alone, and especially the Yuma area. The Yuma growing region itself contributes nearly $3 billion to our state's economy. So yes, we are very grateful for winter agriculture here in Arizona. Next slide, please. So I referred to leafy greens quite a bit on the last slide. When we talk about leaf vegetables or leafy greens, there are 17 different types. You may see some of your favorites on the list. Some of my favorites are romaine lettuce and spinach. So a lot of people think Yuma, especially if you're not familiar with the area, that it's just the desert, right? So you're partially right. We are very blessed to have the rich soil water from the Colorado and Gila rivers, plentiful sunshine and fertile soil that allows for great growing in the Yuma area. Lettuce and cabbage being the biggest production commodities. Next slide. So the Arizona Department of Agriculture knows how important our agriculture is and the big contribution it has to our economy. We have a very important job to protect consumers. That's our first and foremost role, to ensure good agricultural practices are being followed. Many will recall the 0157H7 romaine outbreak of 2018, where 5 people perished due to product contamination. Ultimately, contamination can occur, therefore preventing contamination is critical in our role and focusing on the practices which reduce those risks. We accomplish our protection goals with these 5 primary methods. Outreach and education. We provide resources and conduct educational farm outreach and attend agriculture events where we have table outreaches and partner up with other agencies. And the second point, each month we offer grower training courses to help attendees better understand the importance of the FSMA produce safety rule. It also covers good agricultural practices. The training covers 7 modules and takes place over a 2-day period presented virtually via Zoom. We also have our on-farm readiness reviews. This is where trainers such as Norm and myself go out to farms and provide a free voluntary on-farm readiness review. This is an on-site walkthrough of a farm to evaluate and identify areas where they can improve food safety and good agricultural practices. And number 4, we also offer technical assistance, whether our stakeholders have questions regarding farm equipment, what table to purchase, what machinery to purchase, agricultural water or animal intrusion issues onto the farm. We can offer guidance along with our University of Arizona cooperative extension partners. And lastly, our team of inspectors first conduct a soft inspection where it allows farms to correct any issues that they might have identified. Then usually about a year later, it is considered a pretty much a real inspection. Farms are again inspected to make sure that they're in compliance and any issues or any violations are found. Next slide. I'm briefly going to talk about the Food Safety Modernization Act. Norm will be going more into detail in later slides. So the Food Safety Modernization Act, or FSMA, actually amends the 1938 Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. It is the most sweeping reform of our food laws in over 70 years, impacting every aspect of the food chain. FSMA is based on prevention principles, not reactive principles. The goal is to be proactive in reducing foodborne illness and foodborne outbreaks. Norman likes to compare the FSMA to a pie with 7 pieces. The produce safety rule is just a piece of that pie. The number 1 topic of today's presentation will be the produce safety rule, or PSR. The rule establishes mandatory science-based minimum standards for the safe growing, harvesting, packing, and holding of fruits and vegetables grown for human consumption. Since this presentation is about the produce safety rule, I'll forgo diving into the other 6 pieces of the FSMA pie. because our team at the Arizona Department of Agriculture only deals with the produce safety rule. Next slide. So the official name for the produce safety rule is the standard for growing, harvesting, packing, and holding a produce for human consumption. The produce safety rule is found in Title 21 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 112. Since the Arizona Department of Agriculture adopted the produce safety rule by code reference, the rule can also be found in Title 3, Article 10, 11, and 12 of the Arizona Administrative Code. Our inspectors reference the Arizona Administrative Code during inspections and inspect for mirrors the Title 21. Next slide. So what is a farm? This is important because we have harvesters, we have coolers that we deal with, we have growers. So it's very important that we understand what is a farm. The rule definition purposes a farm that can be a grower, a harvester, a packer, or a holder or cooler, not just a grower in the traditional sense. All of these businesses are considered farms under the produce safety rule. Some farms are vertically integrated where they are the grower, harvester, packer, and holder. But more often, especially here in the Yuma area, farms are segmented separately. We see a grower and that's all they do. They just grow. Then we'll see a harvest company just come in and harvest the product. And then it'll pass on to another company where they'll cool the product. So you can imagine how many hands the produce passes through, all before it even gets to a transporter, processor, distributor, grocery store, etc. Okay, so next slide. The produce safety rule lists what produce is subject to the rule and what is not subject to the rule. Commodities are classified as covered or non-covered. Covered produce commodities are commonly consumed raw. They are classified as raw agriculture commodities. On this slide, you'll only see a few examples. Non-covered produce is not usually eaten raw. That typically they typically undergo a kill step, such as cooking. Examples of non-covered produce includes, but are not limited to, what you see on this slide. There are many, many more. Sometimes we run into an issue where a commodity might not be on either list. If that happens, then it's considered covered. Next slide. The produce safety rule establishes basic minimum standards for these areas of farm operations. And I'll elaborate a little bit on each bullet. Worker health and hygiene. This is where we address the principles of food hygiene and food safety. We want to make sure farm supervisors and employees are trained to recognize signs, symptoms of illnesses, and that ill workers are not allowed to work around produce so that they do not become a source of contamination. We also want to make sure farms are trained in the importance of personal hygiene, such as hand washing, proper hand washing, and wearing clean clothes. When we look at worker training, we want to make sure that the training is in the native language, in the language of the worker, that the worker understands. If they can now read and write, then that pictures, illustrations are offered so that the worker does understand the appropriate duties of the job. Training must be specific to the work. We want to make sure that if you hire somebody to harvest, that they're not operating a tractor. We want to make sure that they understand what they were hired for and they're doing their task properly, so that they do not become a source of contamination. That they understand what produce must not be harvested. Over these fields, sometimes we'll see some birds flying over. So if a product has signs of contamination, they need to understand not to harvest that product. We want to make sure that workers are trained at correcting a problem. If something were not to that's not right, that they understand that they need to correct it and report that to their supervisors. And then also on the next slide, the next lines, soil amendments. If a farm is working with soil amendments, we want to make sure that they are aware of the risks associated with all types, such as biological, chemical, and physical amendments. That they're reviewing application methods, whether it's incorporated or injected or surface applied. We want to make sure that they're following the proper timing, such as when it was applied, how many days before harvest, or the season of the application, just to make sure that they're aware of steps they need to take before to reduce any risk of contamination. And then also what we when we do walkarounds, we review proper storage. We want to make sure that it's away from the harvesting fields. We want to make sure that possible runoff doesn't happen into the harvesting areas. Then we also we also talk about wild and domestic animals. We want to make sure that we address those issues that can happen. I talked about animals and birds, and if feces is found, not to harvest that produce. But we also talk about domestic on-farm animals, such as livestock or pets that may carry human pathogens in their feces. So we want to make sure that if those animals are on the farm, that they monitor and make sure they have an outline for a corrective action in advance. We also work with hobby farms, that they're informed of the possible risks of cross-contamination. So we also work with concentrated animal feeding operations, such as dairy facilities, because they're also a concern because of the manure they house, or sometimes we get high blowing wind where it might carry particles onto adjacent lands or harvesting fields. We want to make sure that they're aware of the possible risk. When we look at production water, that's water that's used for growing, such as canals, laterals, flood, furrow, overhead, or drip sprays. These are all sources of agricultural water used for and during activities. It is very important to know your water quality and your source. If they're doing dust abatement, that they know the source of the water and the quality of the water they're using too, so that especially when we get high winds here, that dust flows everywhere. So dust abatement is a big thing here. So we want to make sure that they're aware of what water they're using, and that again does not become a source of cross-contamination. And then we also address post-harvest water. We have standards for rinsing, washing, commodity movement via dump tanks or flumes. Also for the water that's used for cooling or ice making. We look at the water used to spray on harvest machines or flumes, dunk tanks. Water used for cleaning and sanitizing should be monitored for quality. We address hand washing techniques, making sure that they're following the right techniques before they go on harvest fields or into the working area, and after using the restroom. Same thing with drinking water. We want to make sure that it's potable water, that's good drinking water, and they know their source again. And we also have standards for cleaning and sanitation. This is when we want to make sure that it's taking place routinely and that someone is monitoring the process. What good is the process if it's not being monitored and making sure that it's being done correctly? This applies to hand tools, harvest equipment, pack house equipment, floors. We want to make sure that any water is swept away, especially in coolers or holding facilities, so it doesn't become a breeding ground for Listeria. Want to make sure that they're aware of storage areas also, that they're cleaned routinely, so it doesn't attract any pests. And then lastly, equipment, tools, and buildings. We also same process. We want to make sure that they're keeping up with that they have a routinely cleaning their areas, that they have a pest management in place, and that they're monitoring that pest management. If there's a building structure that needs correcting, like windows without the paint, making sure that they're aware that animals can come through there, or if doors are left open where animals can come in, we address those issues as well, also in the exterior. So next, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Norm.
Okay, thank you, Val. Okay, I'm going to cover the history and background of the produce safety rule. The rule, as we like to refer it as, was actually passed and signed into law back in 2011 under the Obama administration. And then it wound its way through a long process of public comment and rulemaking before it actually finally got published in the congressional record in 2015. So once these things came into place, the Arizona Department of Agriculture, through our principal investigator, Teresa Lopez, she was the one who reached out and sought the FDA funding that would stand up our program within the state, and also establish what we call our program path. Now, the term path I'll cover in another slide. So without the hard work that Teresa did, getting the funding and all of the beginning processes, it certainly wouldn't have happened without all of her hard work, and we thank her for that. So the next slide is about that path. Not every state is the same, and how they go about implementing the produce safety rule. There's three paths, A, B, and C, Arizona being C. The first one, though, is Path A. These are some states that have absolutely no regulatory inspection authority, and they voluntarily choose to go down this path, if you will, and the inspections in those states are actually conducted by the Food and Drug Administration. However, this Path A state does everything else. Inspections are done by FDA, but the state is responsible for developing what is called a farm inventory or list of farms within the state. They're responsible for all of the outreach and training. Val mentioned the grower training courses that we do with the cooperative extension. So this is a shared responsibility in Path A states. Now, Path B states, they do their own inspections under FDA credentialing and authority, and they also do their program support items, as we mentioned, as far as outreach, on-farm readiness review, and the like. Now, Path C states, and this is where Arizona is a perfect example, we actually have that regulatory authority. We have the two inspectors, Brad and Sade, as mentioned earlier, and we have our own state authority because we accepted in our legislative rules and so forth, we adopted the produce safety rule and codified it into Arizona law. So we do the whole shebang. We inspect, we have that regulatory authority, and we do all of the other support features, if you will, that will promote the program. And a little more background about here in Arizona and how the program got stood up, if you will. One of the first things we did was trying to create a farm inventory or list of farms in the state of Arizona that grow the covered produce that Val talked about. And I'm going to tell you, that was no easy task. There was no prior registration in the state of Arizona. We had little idea how many farms that we were looking for and how we were going to go about locating them. And there's so many farms, and differentiating which farms simply by their name as to whether John Doe farm is a produce farm or John Doe is a cotton farmer, which we would have no regulatory authority over. So finding out what they grow and being covered under this rule was extremely important to us. Now there is USDA data as far as farms, but it was somewhat limited because those farm estimates that in the what they call the NAS data is estimates, and it doesn't have specific names of farms and so forth. So that really wasn't a good path for us. So what we did is we just started with our own internal data. Val mentioned the leafy green marketing agreement, and we started with those farms that we knew about in the Yuma and metropolitan Phoenix area, and reached out to them and obtained what we call questionnaires for them, and started building a database within our department. We also used pesticide applicator lists that were available to us from another division within the Department of Agriculture. And that helped us a lot to identify certain farms. I mentioned the leafy green marketing agreement. We also used Dun and Bradstreet information, and also other lists that were available from the USDA, that they have a program that is called Good Agricultural Practices and Good Handling Practices, or GIP-GAP as it's often called. There was a database where we could pull farm names to that. We also looked at MANTA searches, local harvest, farm bureaus, and also a number pardon me, of Google searches, such as farmers markets, which turned out to be a great boon for us. We also found many directories that were out there that identified U-pick farms, or under the categories of sustainable or organic, local harvest. Even MapQuest helped us out with that. And of course, looking for and Googling up commodity specific farms, such just as simply saying lettuce farms in Arizona or tomato farms in Arizona. So we tried to pull out all of the stops as far as identifying these farms. So in the meantime, to date, we now have an established mandatory farm registration process, and it's at no cost to the farm. They simply go online and register with us, and the word is getting out there very well. And we also register and re-register our farms on an annual basis using simple Google Forms. When it comes to outreach, we perform what we call informational farm visits, and these are actual on-site farm visits. We give these farms literature regarding the produce safety rule, our grower training program, and seek to put them into our inventory. We also have visited actual farmers markets, simply walking around and seeing who's selling there, to help promote not only our inventory, but also getting people signed up to our grower training courses. And we've had various kinds of industry meetings with the Yuma Safe Produce Council, LGMA, and one of the big ones is the Southwest Ag Conference, which is performed every year over in Yuma. So we do a lot of outreach there and presentations just like this one here. Wherever we get invited, we will certainly go to and get our word out. So it also helps us even today with networking with the various state and county agencies to help us get known out there. The next item there is grower training. We do conduct grower Produce Safety Alliance grower training courses at once a month. And we started out doing this in person, going around the state. And after we became certified trainers by the Produce Safety Alliance, we attempted to do our training in key agricultural regions and cities around the state, such as Yuma, Phoenix, Verde Valley area, down around Tucson, Wilcox, etc. So this grower training course sets or allows farms to meet the minimum training requirements of the produce safety rule, because each farm, whether it's a grower, harvester, packer, or folder, has to have at least one person on staff, kind of like a PIC, that is educated in the rule and is their point of contact. Now, our motto at our department is that we want to educate before and while we regulate. Yes, we understand that we're a regulatory agency, but the big part of what we do, and particularly with Valentine, is that education. So on-farm readiness review, Val mentioned that. I won't go into it real deep, but it is a free and voluntary consultation that we do. It's educational, not regulatory, and we consult with the person in charge or the food safety person for the farm and review their good agricultural practices. And we try to see that and measure it up. Does it align with the produce safety rule? And where we can make recommendations for them to come into compliance with the rule before they ever see an inspector. Again, we want to educate before and while we regulate. I've mentioned about primacy with the state, and we are fully responsible for that, technical assistance and compliance enforcement, everything. So our inspection program began in late 2018, and we hired a single inspector at that time. Unfortunately, he left the program before actually hitting the ground, which was somewhat of a setback, but those things happen. And we have since hired 2 inspectors. And of course, an inspector has to have a thorough knowledge of the rule and be that subject matter expert, because they are doing the regulatory end of this. They also are sent off to a 3-day training by FDA. That's called the FD 226, produce inspections for regulators. So they get that good baseline training on the rule and inspection processes. We do use tablets when it comes to their inspections for inspection forms and reports. And our program manager, Danielle Runyon, she mentors each of the inspectors in this process and goes out with them. And the inspector shadows the program manager, and then at some point it gets turned over where the inspector will do an inspection shadowed by Danielle. And before they're ever cut loose, it's important that we know that they are prepared and ready to do those inspections. So with that, so by 2019, we were pretty much firing on all cylinders. With this pyramid you see here, we had our inventory in place, and we were building relationships with our farms and constituents. Our training was in place with grower training. We were conducting the free consultations called the On-Farm Readiness Review, and our partners at the Arizona State University were very closely working with us in those processes. And then finally, they started doing these initial inspections to ensure that farms were in compliance with the rule. Now, I'll mention that the initial inspections, and Val alluded to this, the very first time our inspectors would go to a farm, I'll call it a soft inspection. It wasn't a full-blown regulatory inspection. Again, educate before we and while we regulate. It really is geared towards, okay, this inspection process is happening, but this first one, we are going to work with you to bring you again into compliance. Then all inspections thereafter are full regulatory inspections. So then, oh boy, everybody can appreciate this. You know what happened in early 2020. Everything came to a screeching halt because of COVID. We all have experienced the stay inside orders, illnesses of people, quarantines for those who were exposed to coworkers and loved ones and so forth. And quite frankly, no meetings were occurring, or in-person trainings were happening. The same applied to the U of A. They were restricted from in-person meetings or travel about the state as well. And because of that, our training venues dried up, which were typically locations from the U of A. So we had to do a bit of a shift and refocus. We did a lot of working from home and shifted our priority to further drive our inventory development and outreach by phone with our farms and so forth. So we even had some of us, quite frankly, myself included, had to brush up on the use of Zoom. Thank God for Zoom, but also Google Meets and other, virtual meeting types of platforms. So this was our big pivot. We had to take and adapt this in-person classroom training and turn it into a remote delivery by way of Zoom. The Produce Safety Alliance, based out of Cornell University, they approved online training, and it's been a blessing in disguise. And each method, classroom and virtual, has its pros and cons. So with classroom training, hey, actually getting to shake people's hand is very interactive. That's a big plus, because you get to meet your stakeholders and develop those relations for them through that direct interaction and one-on-one. Unfortunately, on the downside, it's very labor intensive for classroom training, costly in planning, travel expenses, delivery, and the actual execution of the course. And even some of these rural areas, farms didn't like to have to travel themselves also, even though we tried to keep them centrally located so they didn't have to travel any more than an hour away to get to a meeting place. So as we said, we were doing Yuma and Tucson and Wilcox, Nogales and Parker, it's a lot of great areas where we were doing classroom. But for Zoom, quite frankly, we did have smaller class sizes. We pretty much cut them in half from 25 to a maximum of 15, actually. Very convenient, because people can train from their office or their home or other location, and it's less expensive for everyone. And we have, to some point, reached a saturation point with farms within the state of Arizona because of the aggressive nature of all of the training that we've done. We've trained a lot of people, which I'll share with you in some of the statistics. But our trainings right now are typically attended by new farms that are coming on board. Existing businesses, they have turnover, so they're training new people, and they're also getting deeper dive, if you will, into their own organizations and sending multiple people from their organization, even though it's only one person is required to take the training. These companies have found the value in it. So I'm going to move on a little bit just so we have some time for questions and answers as well. Our education, we talked about the training course. We do offer it in English and Spanish. Our Spanish version is operated through Cornell University, our partners there. And we also do pre and post-season updates with our constituents throughout the state. Those twice yearly meetings, we get with them, and so they know what to expect in the upcoming, say, winter season or melon season, and provide regulatory information and trends and other items that are of importance, such as if FDA might be doing lettuce sampling in the region as well. And during our post, we talk about accomplishments and any challenges that occurred and how we can improve in the coming season, and how we can get better on that. We're also doing a lot of workshops. Last year, we did a workshop on biological soil amendments of animal origin. It was very well attended by farms throughout the state, and we had some great presenters on soil amendments. At that time, finally, COVID restrictions were starting to ease, so we actually had a hybrid meeting. Not everybody could still travel, but again, we had composting businesses, federal officials presenting, extension agents from Yuma County. It really was a great event, and even included an actual on-site visit to a compost operation in Goodyear that is run and operated by Duncan Family Farms. Many of you will recognize that name. Presentations were done by Arnott Duncan and Jeremy Vanderzil, who is the food safety manager for Duncan. Also, we host events and have since the inception. We have twice hosted the Western States Group, and as evidenced by the name, it is the Western States. Those are the Department of Ags. We get together on an annual basis and share our best practices and talk about each state's produce safety rule activities. It's great networking and sharing that information. We have also hosted on 2 occasions the Train the Trainers for the on-farm readiness review with NASDA, and also a similar Train the Trainer for the grower training as well. And what we're really excited about is what's coming up in this December, next month, is that we're going to actually host the annual meeting of the National Association of State Ag Departments. And this is going to be an in-person meeting representing 47 different states and 5 U.S. Territories. And it's the first nationwide in-person meeting in over 2 years. So it's really good to know that we're getting back to some sort of normalcy here. So just to give you a little bit of idea about our grower training courses, we do give a pre and post exam. This is merely to measure their knowledge coming in and knowledge going out. And we typically see a rise in the range of correct answers and so forth. They come in with typically 16 correct answers out of 25, and on average improve to 22 out of 25. So we are obviously continuing our outreach, and before COVID happened, we've mentioned how we've been doing educational farm visits, going to farmers markets, industry presentations, all this table outreach as well. And of course, we're doing the inspections. So that planning is extremely important by our program manager, and we look at who's going to be inspected. So we do look at obviously the covered farms and those that have particular commodities that are higher risk than others. And obviously, we're going to be inspecting leafy green farms more often than we are carrot farms, just based on history of outbreaks, etc. And there are some farms that have what is called a qualified exemption. They have some special considerations for them. We did talk about the initial versus routine inspections, and when inspected, the farms do receive what is called an observation report. That's their very first paper they get in hand. Then once that observation report is issued, it does go to a compliance officer to be double checked over before a final inspection report summary is sent. And of course, our inspectors are responsible for compliance and enforcement of the rule. And we have had very, very good compliance, and observations or errors, if you would, are usually corrected, many of them or most of them on site or shortly thereafter. And we've been very fortunate that farms have not tried to evade inspection and so forth. Our inspections are scheduled unless a farm has deliberately tried to evade inspection and didn't want to be inspected, but that truly has not been the rule. So I mentioned these are quite often aligned with what can be seen in a food establishment as well. Pooled and standing water, I'll just kind of bounce around off of this. We're always concerned about listeria. Obviously, hand washing is always big, and drop produce, whether it's onto the ground or onto a pack room floor or a elevated walkway or falls off a truck, etc. Drop produce, there is specific language in the produce safety rule that prohibits the harvesting of drop produce. And of course, the common things that you see, such as trash accumulation, and specific to our end of it, we have to address farm registration when people don't re-register, and documentation and records are extremely important. And they actually, some of the key records have to be not only signed off by who performs them, but also have a supervisory sign off as well. So here's Val mentioned about one of the programs that we're getting into, and I'll touch base on it. It is something we are doing with harvesting companies this year, based out of our own experience with harvesting companies and the errors or observations that have been made by us as trainers and also the inspectors. We saw that there was a need to work with harvesting companies and do outreach with them. So we did a needs assessment. The university is actually going to hire another trainer that is Spanish or bilingual. And we have already gathered our resources for this training, and we're starting a pilot. In fact, the first one is going to be next month, working with a big harvesting company. So we're very excited about that. And it is our intention to promote this training with all harvesting companies and try to get them on board so we can actually get one-on-one with these field supervisors. So I'll talk, as we kind of wind this thing up, we'll talk about some of our accomplishments. We've identified almost 1,000 farms within the state. We have actually trained more than 1,000 attendees, and also conducted 120 20 on-farm readiness reviews, and double that actual educational visits, 240 out there, and provided a lot of technical assistance out there. And kudos to our inspectors. We only have 2 folks out there, and we really didn't stand up inspections until 2019. And since then, they've completed over 200 inspections. So a round of applause to our inspection team. So what's ahead for us? Some of the same things, outreach. We continue to drive our inventory and our training, conducting reviews, providing that technical assistance and inspections. Very excited about the on-demand training, and also something that's in the work is emergency response training. We have been taking courses through ORAU on emergency coordination response, outbreak investigations, trace back, aseptic sampling, and other important trainings in this particular area, with the goal of assisting FDA when there is an outbreak, so we can be other boots on the ground to help them. So with that, I am going to open it up to any questions you may have. Val, myself, and I need to get to somehow where I can see, there's the chat. There we go. I can see that now. Let me see. Norm, is there any sampling and lab analysis done on very produce products? Impressive program. Well, I will say that the industry often does their own produce sampling, and they send it off for pathogen testing, and kudos to them for doing that. Hope that answers that question. We ourselves do not do pathogen testing in our program, but the FDA last year and this year, last year they did Arizona, this year they did pathogen testing up in the, I believe, the Salinas area and so forth. So FDA's got a more aggressive pathogen testing program. Gila River community and can relate to your work. Thank you. You got your RSO working with tribal. Great. We have, in fact, on the tribal end, we do have folks that come to our training that are from tribal entities. We welcome anyone from tribal entity to reach out to us about the grower training and attending. We do not have regulatory authority on any of the nation lands, but we'll certainly help them if on the training end, and we've had people from Gila River before and others come to the training. So thank you for that question. Any other questions that you can unmute or put in the chat? Can anybody hear me?
Thank you guys for that presentation. We can still hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely some great, amazing, and very important work you guys are doing out there.
I see there's a note here. Pat Cosgrove raised his hand. Pat, do you have a question? No? Let's see, Tracy, I've obtained pesticide safety. Yes, the pesticide training or worker protection program is actually administered by one of our other divisions within the state, but a lot of our farms, not only do they do the worker protection as needed for OSHA compliance, and also they will come to our course for the grower training that's required by the produce safety rule. So I apologize if I went over. I know everybody's chomping at the bit to get to lunch, but I will stay on, and Val will stay on a few more minutes if anybody wants to speak with us and talk about any other further questions. So thank you very much. And that's it. That's a wrap.
Thank you again so much. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to be with us. And you're actually like on the dot at 12:15 is when we were planning on you ending. So you guys are like perfect on your timing.
Thumbs up.
So we will break for lunch now. We'll all reconvene at 1:15. The attendance survey for day 2 is in the chat again. So if you have not filled it out for today, please take a moment to fill that out. And just a recap on the sanitarian renewal. So you will fill out your application online through our health space portal, and then you will send your check to us through the mail. All right, we'll see you guys in an hour. Enjoy your lunch.